Family and FBI officials sharing the same message: bring Nancy Guthrie home. What today's latest press conference is revealing for the first time. And in Utah, a former grief author asked to move her murder trial just before it begins, but the judge isn't having it. In Florida, this man convicted of double homicide says the death penalty recommended by the jury was unconstitutional. We'll get our panel's hot takes. The court of law is done for the day, so it's time to call to order Court of Opinion. Welcome to Court of Opinion. I'm Jenaé, your moderator for the hour, and we are beginning out in Arizona. The search for Savannah Guthrie's missing mother, Nancy, continues. The 84-year-old was last seen Saturday night and was reported missing on Sunday after not showing up for church. The officials have been providing updates, and they give another one today, saying they still have not identified any suspects or persons of interest. But they did say that blood drops found at her house on the front porch, they have been confirmed by DNA as Nancy's. So let's listen back to some of the biggest updates coming out of that press conference today in our daily wrap.
We saw last night the family.
We want to thank all of you for the prayers for our beloved mom, Nancy.
This entire team here, those behind me, and our community are hurting with you. We believe Nancy is still out there. I made a decision to contact our Pima Regional Critical Incident Team. It's made up of law enforcement officers from this entire valley. Blood on the porch, it came back to Nancy. At this time, we have not identified a suspect or a person of interest in this case. We are working our best to do that. This is a timeline that we have been able to develop with some of the things that we've had processed. 5:32 p.m., Nancy travels to her local family's home. At 9:48 p.m., which is very consistent to what we were told by the family, that Nancy was dropped off at home, and we know that because we have a garage door open at approximately 9:48 p.m. At 9:50 p.m., that garage door closes. But at that time, we assume that Nancy's home and probably going to bed. Sunday morning, early morning, at 1:47 a.m., doorbell camera disconnects. At 2:12 a.m., software detects a person on a camera, but there's no video available. They had no subscription, and therefore it would rewrite itself. 2:28, Nancy's pacemaker app shows that it was a disconnect from the phone. And at 11:56 a.m., the family checks on Nancy, discovers her missing, and at 12:03 p.m., 911 is called in to the Pima County Sheriff's Department.
The FBI is now working this case jointly with the Pima County Sheriff's Department, and we're going to start today by announcing a $50,000 reward for information leading to the recovery of Nancy Guthrie and/or the arrest and conviction of anyone involved in her disappearance. We are aware of a ransom letter that was sent to the local media and then to national outlets. As with every lead, we are taking it seriously. And while we advise and recommend from a law enforcement perspective, any action taken on any ransom is ultimately decided by the family.
Should all of these resources be brought to bear sooner?
I guess that, you know, it's Monday morning quarterbacking. I do it all the time, so you have the opportunity to do it for me. I'll take that hit.
It's so unsettling to know that we are in day 5 of this search that continues and really don't have any more answers from officials than we did at the beginning, but they did reveal a lot of new information. So we're going to break it all down with our power panel who is here with us. We have criminal defense attorney Josh Schiffer, attorney and former judge Quentin Washington, and criminal defense attorney Eklund Mercy joining us as well. Good to have all three of you, but this is a difficult story to continue to talk about. I mean, you hope every day that when you wake up, there's going to be some different news and a different outcome in this case. Quentin, let me get your opinion on the tone of officials today. It seems like it has changed a little bit. They confirmed the DNA on that blood that we've all seen, and they hadn't confirmed before. They confirmed that that blood is from Nancy. I mean, that adds another chilling layer to this story.
Because we hope We hope that this is not what we think it is, because you're kidnapping an 84-year-old grandmother who has limited mobility. And so we hope that that's not the case. And so when you have the blood that confirms it, and then you have that, you know, there've been some ransom notes, and they may be fake, they may be real, but they're treating them as real. It's just really tough because nobody wants this to happen.
It's an unbelievable story, Josh. I mean, it's not a story. This is real. It is really playing out. But these details are unlike any high-profile story we've seen that I can remember.
It gets scarier and scarier by the day. I remember when it first broke, it was like, okay, well, this is almost certainly going to be a family member or someone. There's going to be some pretty straightforward leads. Adult people just don't disappear. They're really, you know, as awful as a kidnapping sounds, you can kind of track people down pretty quickly if it's someone that there's a connection with. That lack of connection and the absolute fear that comes along with Savannah Guthrie's celebrity really is the terrifying twist on this, because as much as it could be someone that Nancy knew or something personal, this also could be literally the most horrifying kind of kidnapping, which is just straight up criminal manipulation, trying to get money, trying to take advantage of helpless people. That's more terrifying than anything else because of its randomness and the fact that it could affect anybody with any notoriety in the United States or the world.
Yeah. Eklund, Mercy, weigh in. What's your opinion of where police are telling us they are in this investigation? They have the FBI involved. They say they're using all of the resources that are at their disposal.
Well, unfortunately, we still have a body that's called ICE that who's been picking up people. So if we don't clear them out first, then I don't think it's going to be a very formidable search. And based on Ms. Guthrie's position as a journalist, we have seen what's been happening to journalists as well. So I would cast a wider net. I would cast a wider net. The thing is that what I didn't hear is if her cell phone pinged, where her cell phone was prior to. Do we have any messages that were fearful? Because when we have that the camera was disconnected and the company that the camera is connected to did not itself, signal alarm, that brings me pause. That brings me pause. I think that is bigger than, than a lot. Because once I hear that there's evidence that the camera alarm was disconnected and that company did not send somebody immediately, that gives me pause.
Yeah, let me double down on some of those details that you're talking about, because that came out today, Eklund, that at 1:47 a.m., so middle of the night, the doorbell camera disconnected. That's per the sheriff's office today. And also that the software on the camera detected a person, so somehow told the company that, yes, there's a person here, but that the camera did not record the person and save the video. It covered it back up because of a lack of subscription or something of that nature. I mean, the details that we got today really did move the ball in terms of what the public knows for sure from police in this case. But I want to play something that really changed the dynamic of this that came out late yesterday evening. And this is Savannah Guthrie along with her sister and her brother speaking directly to whoever has their mother. This was posted to Savannah Guthrie's Instagram last night. Take a look.
We too have heard the reports about a ransom letter in the media. As a family, we are doing everything that we can. We are ready to talk. However, we live in a world where voices and images are easily manipulated. We need to know, without a doubt, that she is alive and that you have her. We want to hear from you, and we are ready to listen. Please reach out to us.
When you hear this, it is gut-wrenching to think. You can't prepare for this. I don't care what kind of media training and media experience and legal experience Savannah Guthrie has. That is the absolute worst position.
And there is so much to unpack in their willingness to just make that outcry video. A lot of crisis interventionists are going to tell you, no, you don't respond, you don't negotiate, you sit back. Just coming forward publicly talking, that is in response and kind of tickling back the kidnappers, showing how serious and frightening this is, showing the lack of control that the Guthrie family is experiencing with their missing mother. It also, unfortunately, tells me that law enforcement doesn't have some of the answers we would hope they would right now.
But let me also say this. I think it's simple. I understand what you're saying. I think a little differently. Speaking directly to them, because they have not been directly spoken to, is the only way you're going to have some type of dialogue. Because unfortunately, all of us have, and this is why this is such a difficult story, all of us in the pit of our stomach know the way the outcome is that may happen, and we don't want it to happen, right? If you don't do something, we know what the outcome is. She has limited mobility, she has, some health issues, she may not make it. So the only thing you can do is to get a message out as fast as possible. We will do something to get our mother back.
And that
we got to say that.
And that may be in contravention to what they're being guided with from law enforcement. Remember, this is the family
Law
coming out.
enforcement today did say that
they didn't comment on it.
They give advice, but that it's ultimately up to the family if they want to respond to a ransom letter. They say they're investigating it, and Eklund, they actually arrested some people who were connected to a fake letter. They determined it was someone just trying to get money, not necessarily the one that we've all heard about. Let me play that and get your reaction to it, Eklund. This is the FBI representative there in Phoenix who was speaking today at that press conference.
My next message is to those imposters who are trying to take advantage and profit from this situation. We will investigate and ensure you are held accountable for your actions. We have made one arrest related to an imposter ransom demand, and a complaint will be presented to a magistrate judge later today.
Eklund, that's such an important message to get out there to make sure there are not copycats to that imposter trying to insert themselves in this tragedy.
Yes, and I'm just so proud of Ms. Guthrie. I think that just based off of the statement that she's working with some professionals requesting and demanding proof of life while insisting on, the knowledge of AI can be involved. She did so well on demanding proof of life and showing that, hey, AI can manipulate certain things. I'm so proud of her because I know it was hard for her to make that statement, and she did an excellent job. And I think that they are following directions. I think that they're following directions from some heavy hitters, some very serious professionals.
But here's my question, though. When these kidnappings happen, I don't know where there's ever been an outcome where the people who are kidnapping someone live happily ever after. Like in the movies, in real life, I just don't know where that happens.
I'm going to push back on you because the international stuff that I'm exposed to in other countries, kidnappings are far more common, so much so that if you're an executive living in especially some less developed countries, kidnapping insurance that pays the ransom is a somewhat regular thing. And my fear is that we now have a new strain, or not a new strain, but criminals who are realizing, hey, this is a cash cow. We now have crypto to pay these ransoms by moving fast with wealthy, prominent people and with extreme threats against their loved ones. Man, that's cough up some money. It's all figuring out how to gig that system so that people don't call the police, involve authorities, and just pay some money. And unfortunately, we never hear about the people that do that.
And I'm glad you pointed that out, Josh, because that's been a conversation we've been having here just with my colleagues, that we don't see these types of things outside of the movies. I'm thinking about Denzel Washington's Man on Fire. Like, we don't see prominent people having to go to the media and share a plea for their loved one. That's just something that I haven't heard about in recent time here in this country, but you're saying it's something internationally that's far more common.
It absolutely is, not just for people in entertainment, but more the business community, which is where I'm exposed to, where if you're known in your community as having substantial success, an easy way to rob you isn't put a gun to your head, it's take something of value and hold it for ransom, such as a family member. And if you realize that family members don't have the security that the prominent person does, that they may be easy to reach very quickly, then you throw a ransom note out through the anonymity of the internet and communication, you can now get paid in basically completely anonymous formats, and it becomes almost a smash and grab kidnapping where if you don't get what you want,
of course, what we hope, but we have to leave it there. Our thanks to our panel for their opinions on this one. Our hope, along with so many others, is that Nancy Guthrie is found safe. We've been showing you that tip line. If anybody has information, reach out to the Pima County Sheriff's Office. Our hearts and prayers are with the Guthrie family. Savannah Guthrie, an alum of Court TV. She was a legal correspondent here in the early 2000s. We have been following this story, and we're going to continue to follow it. And tomorrow night, we have a programming note. There's going to be a Court TV Scripps News special. This is inside the desperate search for Nancy Guthrie. It's going to be a live special report where Vinnie Politan, our lead anchor, is going to be joined live from Cody Thomas, who is there on the ground in Tucson, Arizona. And at 8 o'clock on Friday, they are going to be digging into all of these details. You don't want to miss it. When we come back, we're going to take a break, but we're then going to take you to New Jersey, the Mansion murders trial for Paul Caneiro. We've been following this one for weeks, and the medical examiner on the stand gave a lot of information and a lot of evidence in front of this jury. What do these autopsies tell us about the victims of the crime?
Tonight on Closing Arguments, the mother of Savannah Guthrie was taken from her own home, but does an alleged ransom note lead to answers? We're live with the latest in the abduction of Nancy Guthrie.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
The disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
Here on the ground in Tucson, there have been thousands of leads.
Everyone is looking for you, Mommy.
Where is Nancy Guthrie? A Court TV and Scripps News special report, Friday night at 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Welcome back. We are heading now to New Jersey to take a look at the evidence in the Mansion murders trial for Paul Caneiro. In this case, prosecutors allege that Caneiro carried out a brutal attack back in 2018, that he went over to his brother's house, killed his brother and his sister-in-law, and then stabbed his niece and nephew to death. They say he set the family's home on fire and then went back to his own house and set it on fire too, to make it look like both brothers were being attacked. Now, in real time, court was dark today, but the jury took in a lot of evidence, crucial evidence yesterday, and we are breaking it down. Here's what our team chose as some of the best evidence jurors saw yesterday. And this is the autopsy of Keith and Jennifer Caneiro, and it shows the injuries and cause of death for both of these victims. The medical examiner testified that a bullet fragmented was found under Jennifer's scalp, and her abdomen had multiple stab wounds, so she was stabbed and shot. Another medical examiner testified that Keith Caneiro had multiple gunshot wounds, and we do want to warn you, these images we're about to show you, they are graphic. These are the gunshot wounds on Keith's face. We've blurred out everything except for those wounds themselves. The medical examiner said it's possible that these face shots that are entry and exit wounds, that they were fired as the victim was laying on the ground. Here's a listen to what those two medical examiners testified as the cause and manner of death of Jennifer and Keith.
Now, based on your examination of Jennifer and in light of your education, training, and experience, were you able to come to a determination as to the cause or mechanism of her death?
So for the cause and manner?
Yes.
Okay, so yes, I was. And I listed it as gunshot wound of head and stab wounds of torso. The manner of death is classified as homicide.
Were you able to determine or opine as to a cause of death for Keith Caneiro?
Yes, indeed.
And what was that?
The cause of death is multiple gunshot wounds.
Okay. And with respect to the manner of death, were you able to make any conclusions there from your autopsy?
Homicide.
Autopsies are always a pivotal moment inside of a courtroom. Let's get opinions from our power panel. We have with us Quentin Washington, Josh Schiffer, and Eklund Mercy. Josh, let me start with you. It's graphic for us. The jury sees even more. They see everything in terms of these photographs. Talk about that being the best evidence and how far it goes with jurors who are having to decide if the man in the defense table, if he is the one who committed this.
A few other pieces of evidence can be more powerful than gripping four-color pictures of the instruments and mode of death. Most people have never seen a gunshot when the blood's cleaned away and it's a nice, neat hole. And when you are listening to this expert testimony from people whose whole job is to describe the nature and the science of death, there's a trauma that goes along with it, and it's unforgettable. This is concretization within the juror's mind of the pain, the suffering, the intimate violence that was involved in these murders, which still, to me, come off as a bad screenplay from this brother who was trapped. He made up a ridiculous pathway that he thought was going to extricate himself, and it was clearly a terribly thought out plan because he has left so much evidence, in my opinion, showing that he was the method, motive, and operator for this massacre of his family.
The alleged motive here, money, that his brother was starting to dig into the finances and see that he may have been stealing money. Eglin Mercy, what is your opinion of this evidence in front of the jury?
I think the evidence is definitely helpful to the prosecution, but I have some questions. The reason why it'll be helpful for the defense to make sure that they clear this out is because the shots were like headshot, body shot, headshot. You know, you have to be, you know, really good at shooting to be able to make those types of, you know, it can't be somebody who just learned how to, you know, shoot a gun that day. And then we also have stab wounds, so that also just, you know, calls for like the violent nature or like the anger that's involved with this. But I don't believe it's just one person. I do believe that he may have had an accomplice, and I think that that negative space is where the defense is going to play with. I don't believe that, just based off of the shots made, I don't believe that the accomplice is somebody who's a novice, but that's just my opinion, just based off the just headshot, stomach shot, and then stab wounds. Yeah, that's
Quentin Washington, what do you think about Ecklin's opinion, and also the fact that this victim, according to the medical examiner, the first victim, Keith Caneiro, that he was lying down when he suffered his injuries?
Well, here's the thing. If there's an accomplice, he needs to say something now, and hopefully he can work something out. Because if not, like, you know, fire destroys a lot, but it cannot destroy the science. And so you've got somebody at the scene. If it's somebody else and you're trying to do the empty chair defense, that still doesn't take away from the fact that it could have been two people there, and we know one of them because he's in court. So, I mean, at the end of the day, like, you have to craft a defense which is going to work, and it's tough to say that it's a fire. It's tough to say to somebody else when your client has a lot of evidence that says it's them. They showing receipts on this, and the receipts are tough when you're the purchaser.
And that cruelty of the gunshots when he's down. Like, there's something about we're going to stand across from each other and trade. There's another, if you're down and I'm going to walk up and double tap you, come on, that's cruelty.
You don't kick a man to shoot a man while he's down.
This evidence, it has been hard to take in, hard for us to even review it, but it is important in this case against Paul Caneiro. So here's some even more difficult evidence that the jury had to take in. They also saw and heard evidence pertaining to the cause of death to Paul Caneiro's nephew and niece, Jesse and Sophia, the children of Keith and Jennifer. The medical examiner testified yesterday that these two children had stab wounds and pointed to the evidence that they were not dead at the time of the fires. Take a listen.
Now, based on your examination of Jesse Caneiro, and in light of your education, your training, and experience, were you able to come to a determination as to the cause of his death?
I listed the stab wounds of the torso and left upper extremity as the cause of death, or the main cause of death, but then the contributing cause of death is smoke inhalation.
Were you able to come up with a determination as to cause of death of Sophia Caneiro?
Yes, indeed.
And what was the cause of death that you concluded?
Sharp force injuries and smoke inhalation.
Both children, you hear it there, had evidence of smoke inhalation in their lungs, and the medical examiner saying those stab wounds, it just shocks the conscience. Josh, to think that someone could be so cruel as to stab children, but then they're not even deceased at the time that this house is ablaze.
Man, I spent 20 years figuring out how cruel people can be, and most of the time defending them. This, wow, we're talking pretty top shelf. This is as cruel as you get. The idea that, first of all, you inflicted intimate personal violence on a child, that brings you to a level that is frightening. To then leave them alive to die in a fire is a level of just abject cruelty that shocks the conscience. Doesn't work. It's more.
Eklund, he had a reaction, the defendant. He's, of course, innocent until proven guilty. And he, for one of the few times in court that we've seen him get emotional, during, in particular, his nephew Jesse's autopsy testimony. Your reaction to this evidence and how it goes over with a jury?
Well, just based on the age of the children, if shots were fired, in the house, these children would actually, would run towards the danger. That's why I'm thinking two people at the very least. So one was a killer and one wasn't. So like we have clear evidence that one was able to finish a job and the other person wasn't able to. So that's my look at everything. It looks like probably the kids were there, probably ran towards, and he was given a job to take care of the kids. That's why, probably he's emotional now. But that's just my theory.
That's Eklund Mercy's opinion. Now, we haven't seen any evidence in court. No one has talked about a second person, defense or prosecution. Final thoughts?
So I'm like, or what if he's crying because he remembers that they were calling his name because he's their uncle?
Two ways to look at the same situation, which is continuing to play out there in New Jersey. We are going to, of course, continue to follow that story. Court will get back underway tomorrow, and we'll cover it here on Court TV. We've got to get to our break. When we come back, we're going beyond the gavel, breaking down the biggest true crime cases. And in a blow for the defense, Kouri Richins' murder trial for a second time is not going to be paused. Jury selection begins soon. We'll talk about it next.
She met up with acquaintance 2 at a Maverick gas station in Draper and purchased from him 15 to 30 round green-blue pills, which she understood to be fentanyl.
1 or 2 pills might be accidental. 20 or 5 times the lethal dose is not accidental, Your Honor. That is someone who wants Eric dead.
Welcome back. We are taking you beyond the gavel to a case that is soon heading to trial. Kouri Richins' defense has been denied just days before her murder trial is set to begin a change of venue request she had. The Utah mother of 3 is accused of killing her husband, Eric, with a lethal dose of fentanyl in a laced cocktail. And after his death, she wrote a children's book about grief and promoted it on television. For a second time, Richins asked for that trial to be moved out of Summit County, Utah, arguing that she can't get a fair trial there. The defense attorneys pointed to a jury questionnaire that was sent out and returned showing about 85% of potential jurors already knowing about the case, leaving fewer than 100 people out of 1,700 that they say could serve impartially. But the judge wasn't persuaded. For the second time, he ruled that the trial will stay in Summit County, saying the survey results mirror earlier data and they don't justify moving the case. Now, she's charged with murder and attempted criminal homicide in the 2022 death of her husband. Jury selection scheduled to begin next week on February 10th, with opening statements slated for February 23rd. Let's get our power panel back in here and see what they think about this case. Josh Schiffer, Quentin Washington, and Eklund Mercy. Eklund, I'll start with you. Your opinion of this case and the judge's decision not to move it, even though so many people in Summit County, Utah, know about this case.
I think that's the judge's pride, and I think that I think that was a bad call. Once we have the children's books, I think that the facts lend themselves to a change of venue. You have a children's book, like it's already national, it's already international because of the book, because of the audacity of it. I don't believe that she would get a fair trial there, and I do believe that it is an appealable issue.
Okay, former Judge Washington, she wrote that book. She's the one that promoted it on TV, so that's not even the headlines about this case, but it could add to why people know so much about it.
No, that's definitely true, but here's the thing, legally, right? Knowledge of a case is not the same as inability to be fair. And that's what we're looking at from the jury pool. And so, yes, she may have written a book, but at the same time, the defense is going to argue hard that the book has nothing to do with what happened. But at the same time, this is a case of, can you find 12 people who can press mute on the internet? And that's a tough call.
Yeah, Josh, I mean, not surprising that the judge didn't move it, because we've seen far more high-profile cases that don't budge out of their county, because I've sat through so many jury selections, you almost always can find people who don't watch the news.
Yeah.
A little disheartening, but it's true.
But I'm trying to remember the name of the overture. Dumb, 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 dumb. This is dumb to fight this, because guess what? Now the judge has invited the inevitable appeal that may, just because of the extra friction, prohibit the state from really achieving their goal, which is a clean trial and a clean conviction where the state has strong evidence. Now, I get that it's giving in to the defense and you should fight, 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 fight. But at the same time, I think efficiency and for the integrity of the case, what's wrong with the judge going, all right, 85% of this community knows about this case and may have some prejudgment. Let's give you your wish and make sure that you get the fairest trial possible. I'm still going to be your judge. We're going to get your jury pulled from somewhere else. That proactive solution, cutting off the defense, more judges need to do that. More DAs need to do that. Put their egos to the side and let the integrity of the case dominate their duties.
Okay, Eklund mentioned that grief book that she wrote and how that really probably has impacted how many people know about this case. Let's take a listen back to her interview that she gave on that grief book. Remember, this is before she was arrested, so she was a grieving widow. This is ABC4 Salt Lake City that did the interview.
My husband passed away unexpectedly last year, so it's March 4th was a 1-year anniversary for us, and he was 39. It completely took us all by shock. And we have 3 little boys, 10, 9, and 6. And, you know, my kids and I kind of wrote this book on the different emotions and grieving processes that we've experienced last year.
Eklund Mercy, if you're the defense attorney for Kouri Richins and you were in that jury selection, do you want jurors who, if they already know about the case, do you want them to know about the book as well, or not about the book?
God, no, no. And even that interview, I would definitely make a motion to suppress, because she's also implicating her children, as it's not just her, it was her children that aided in the book. So it's not, you know, it wasn't just her primarily doing it for the grief, that it also includes the children's grief. And this would be like a really great motion if the motion to change venue was granted. I think that it makes the water so murky, because we're having to deal with people's facades on, hey, if they put the internet on mute, as Judge Washington stated. And I don't believe that they have. This case is pretty audacious, and it's really bad. It's really bad.
Yeah, former Judge Washington, if you're the state, what do you want in your jurors who are going to be listening to this case? I know we don't get their entire demographic, but what experience do you want them to have? What do you want them to have perhaps as their careers?
I want them to be able to look at evidence in a dispassionate way, but I also want them to have an understanding of the cruelty that happened here, because this is between a wife and her former husband, but he's her former husband because it's alleged that she killed him, right? But I also want them to understand the planning, if I'm the state, that goes into getting fentanyl, right? That's not something that happened. You went and premeditated to get the fentanyl to then give it to him to kill him. Like, at a certain point, you're working on this.
Okay, Josh Shepard, you got to jump in on this, because the drug dealer for the fentanyl may not necessarily have a story that sticks in court, because he recanted a little bit.
And you do have to explore that, make sure that the state has a straightforward story. But going back to this book, if I'm the defense, I'm realizing I'm probably losing keeping the entire book and everything out, because it is relevant to this story. And if I believe the judge is going to allow, even with some limited instructions, the existence of this book coming in. If I know there's a fact that's going to be tough, you jump on it. You lean into it. And you have to find a way to explain and present that book that doesn't inculpate your client. Now, that's going to be tough. I'm glad I don't have to answer that question. But you workshop it, you figure out what the danger zones are, and you eventually come out with an explanation that she wrote this book and she's not guilty of murder because of X.
We are all going to see that play out. We'll probably know whether the defense is going to lean into it once those opening statements start February 23rd, and jury selection starting next week. When we come back from this break, hot takes and cold facts, our panel giving us their opinions on the biggest headlines, including a convicted killer's appeal. He isn't challenging the verdict, he's challenging the punishment. Why Wade Wilson's death sentence could end up before the U.S. Supreme Court.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, the mother of Savannah Guthrie was taken from her own home, but does an alleged ransom note lead to answers? We're live with the latest in the abduction of Nancy Guthrie.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
The disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
Here on the ground in Tucson, there have been thousands of leads.
Everyone is looking for you, Mommy.
Where is Nancy Guthrie? A Court TV and Scripps News special report. Friday night at 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Welcome back to Court of Opinion. Let's get the hot takes from our panel on the cold, hard facts. On some of the biggest headlines this week, this one out of Georgia. Marietta police charged the parents of a 5-year-old boy who authorities believe was beaten to death. Alexis Etram and Michael Horn face several charges, including cruelty to a child and aggravated battery. They are the mother and father of that 5-year-old. Those charges could be upgraded. According to an arrest warrant, Horn beat the child so badly it led to bleeding in the brain. Police say that Etram allowed these repeated beatings and torture of the 5-year-old boy by his father over the course of 5 months. Let's bring in our power panel, Josh Schiffer, Quentin Washington, and Eklund Mercy. Eklund, I'm going to start with you on this one. Remember, 25 seconds for all of our panelists so we can get to all of the stories here. This one is it always breaks your heart when a child is the victim. Your take on both the mother and the father being charged?
I think that the father should be charged, but I don't see any connection with the mother because within 5 months, I don't see something changing like that. If you said within like 5 years, then I would see something. But 5 months, I don't see any connection.
All right, Quentin Washington, your take on the mother and the father being charged, but also they called 911 and authorities did respond. They were there actively doing CPR. Could something have been missed here?
No, here's the thing. Whatever the defense ends up being, this case is a reminder that parenting is not a vibe, it's a duty. And in criminal court, the state doesn't have to prove you meant harm. Sometimes it's about what you failed to do when a child couldn't protect themselves. Like the saying goes, facts are stubborn things, and these facts are heartbreaking.
Spoken like a true judicial opinion. Thank you, Quentin Washington. Josh Schiffer, your take on this tough story.
All right, this is absolutely brutal because what is this about? This is about the theft and destruction of innocent lives. We're talking about a 5-year-old, something where the whole body weighs less than 30, 40, 50 pounds. Now, we've got someone accused of destroying that kind of innocence, so it's good that it's in Cobb County. Cobb County, very aggressive community, has a long history of destroying innocent people. It'll be the right guy this time.
Josh Schiffer, thank you for that opinion. Let's move to our next story. This one out of California. A judge rules that one of Melody Buzzard's half-sisters will be responsible for decisions surrounding her remains. The 9-year-old was found shot to death in Utah in December. Her mother, Ashley Buzzard, is charged with her murder. The little girl's belongings were removed from her home as the court finalizes the arrangements, and there's a growing memorial that can be seen outside of the home where she once lived. There's a private memorial service that's set to take place on February 10th, which would have been little Melody's 10th birthday. Let's get to our power panel. Their 25-second takes. Judge Washington, there's so many things that have to be done when there's a child that is dead and their mother is the one who is accused.
I mean, this is just a really tough one, right? Here's what bothers me. Grief doesn't pause the legal clock. When belongings move before the full story is settled, it creates questions. In a courtroom, that turns into arguments. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. And while the chain of custody and documentation in this matter are outside of a crime lab, if everyone's acting in good faith and transparency, that protects them too. But the problem is that they're not here.
Yeah. Josh Sheffer, your take.
Yeah, my tough thing with this that is galling me, there's a big argument between some of these family members about this beautiful young girl's personal effects and what's going to happen. And it galls me as a father and lawyer to see that the eviction lawyers already moved forward and are kicking this family out, whereas the law enforcement, they took their sweet time with this investigation from the front end, while Vinnie Politan and everybody else was screaming, where's the answers? Why aren't you going after them?
Eklund, your take on that part of it. This seemed to be an extremely long investigation, and then we find out actually remains were found much earlier. They had to take the time to get them identified, and we have a mother who was not behind bars, especially over the disappearance of her child.
At this, it's too messy. It's too messy, and at this point, I don't think a conviction can happen if you have this amount of mess. And because law enforcement is involved in the eviction, law enforcement is involved in the investigation, law enforcement is involved in all of it, and the fact that in each part that they're involved in, they dropped the ball and kicked it, really is hard to get it's going to be hard to get a conviction.
All right, let's move to our final story of the night. This one out of Florida, a face that many of our Court TV viewers can't forget. A convicted killer who stalked and strangled 2 women to death plans to go to the Supreme Court to get his death penalty overturned. Attorneys representing Wade Wilson told the Florida Supreme Court that the jury's decision wasn't constitutional, that it was unconstitutional. And this is all because Florida law changed back in 2023 to allow a jury to recommend death by an 8-4 majority, not a unanimous vote, which is required in most states in the U.S. The Florida Supreme Court denied the defense's appeal, but if Wilson's team is successful in getting their case heard by the U.S. Supreme Court, it could impact all the Florida cases since 2023, where a less than unanimous jury recommended death. Eklund, Mercy, your take.
I think it's necessary. Unfortunately, this is the case that has to go on. I think that the Supreme Court definitely needs to make a foundational law on the unanimous decision when it comes to death penalty. We didn't have that law. We need it codified now.
All right, former Judge Washington, what do you think this is even going to go to the U.S. Supreme Court?
See, that's the thing about this argument about the Supreme Court. I think it's ironic that you literally have Florida man challenging Florida law to go to the Supreme Court. And any lawyer can say we're going to the Supreme Court. This is like dropping an album, right, coming next year. The reality is that SCOTUS takes a very few number of cases, and they're hunting for constitutional errors, not giving a redo of the facts. Like Justice Holmes said, hard cases make bad law. The question is this hard or just loud?
So, Josh Sheffer, this is one of those issues I could talk about all day. Florida law, the death penalty, it changed because of the Parkland school shootings. When the shooter there, he didn't get the death penalty. It outraged a lot of people, and that's when we saw the law change to less than unanimous. But we expected this has to be tested with SCOTUS, and it hasn't yet. So, to Eklund's point, do you think that it is time for that test to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And the worst facts make for some of our best rulings, because it takes really egregious facts to get all the way to United States Supreme Court. Because just like Judge said, yeah, sure, I can tell you I'm getting there. They don't take a lot of people walking up with applications. The lack of unanimity is a major problem. Should the state be able to murder you, kill you, put you to death without everybody agreeing the way they have to agree everywhere else? No.
Our thanks to our power panel for their takes. Eklund, Mercy, Josh Sheffer, and former Judge Quentin Washington. We appreciate you. Thank you for connecting with us this hour. I'm Julia Jenaé for Court of Opinion, reminding you we all have opinions. They should be rooted, though, in the facts, and we should be striving to respect the other's opinion even when we don't agree with it.